Good afternoon, everyone who's tuned in. We apologize for the technical difficulties. We thought we tested it out, but there were some glitches that we overlooked. But okay, we're on now. All right.
So we created a new link.
You could follow it. Yeah, find it in the.
We added it now to our bio on Instagram. But if you know someone who's interested that was signed on to the other link, so just go ahead and share it with them.
So our Instagram profile is Follow the Child NJ. So if you find that up on Instagram, if you look us up, the link in the bio will link you to this live video. The old one is a dead link.
Okay, so do you guys want to start? All right, so again, welcome. And again, we apologize. This is our first live stream, if you haven't noticed. First episode of Follow the Child. It is Sunday, September 30th, and thank you for joining us. About 14 minutes late, but thank you for joining us. So our topic this month is emotional intelligence. But before we get into that, maybe some of you are asking, what is Follow the Child? How did we start? Maybe some of you don't know. This is actually our third session. We were doing live events. Well, I don't want to say live like YouTube live, but in-person events. Meetups at Fusion, located in Paramus. And so we've been doing a topic every month. This is our third month, and then our third topic. So, so what is Follow the Child and who are we?
Well, Layla and myself have a background in Montessori education. So Follow the Child is really the essence of Montessori. Those are Maria Montessori's exact words, because essentially that's what we're trying to do. We're following each child based on their individual needs through their natural course of development. And we understand that no two children are the same. And so that is the basis of the educational philosophy of Montessori education.
And that's why we named it Follow the Child, and it comes from that background, mashallah. And then who we are, as people, we're just three friends, and we just had an interest for like child development and learning and growing.
Yeah, meeting new people and seeing what they had to contribute.
Right, and just learning in general, like from others, because
hopefully we don't want to be the ones doing this every month. Hopefully we'll have some of you come on here.
Yeah, we definitely want to invite people.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that we've discussed at length was that there is just so much information out there. There are a ton of resources in education, mashallah, and it's a beautiful thing. So what we were doing, and also we know that there are a lot of different forums. Some people want to do like different Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups, Instagram groups. But we kind of want to just bring it more together instead of having to search where these groups are. Maybe if we find what those topics are and then bring them in here as just another thing to add to the table, and hopefully through YouTube it's an easier platform for sharing for everyone. So so one of the topics, going back to our topic for this month, was emotional intelligence. Like, what is that, and where did we get that topic? So basically what we did was we asked you. So you gave us our topic, and a lot of you wanted to find out, it wasn't everyone, but a lot of you wanted to find out like what it was. So,
right, so we just made an Instagram poll on our Instagram stories, and then there was a few answers, and we decided to go with emotional intelligence for September, and it couldn't have been a better topic. It's very important. And so yeah, your participation, you tell us what to talk about, and then we'll bring it to you, and you can also suggest to us those who we should reach out to learn more from about whatever subject we decide to cover for the month.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's definitely like
our
followers, they have a big part in what we do. And then we're also starting a podcast.
Yes, we are. We are actually at the very moment podcasting right now. So along with this video, the link for the podcast will be available to everybody in case you guys, or someone who wasn't able to to make it live. You'll be hearing the recordings later.
I'm a big podcast listener.
Yes.
Like, I'm doing chores at home and I want to be entertained. I don't have to look at
driving.
anything, or driving, like those commutes.
Doing dishes, that's the best time too.
That's me. I'm doing dishes and then I have the Bluetooth on and I'm just listening to something that would entertain me or that would benefit me in any way. And like podcasts are like the new thing. I love them. So we decided podcasts for those of you who are audio, auditory listeners. Yeah, auditory learners. Right.
So let's just get right into this.
Okay.
First, we're going to define emotional intelligence. I'm sure most of you already have a vague idea, but maybe there's some things that you don't know. And then we will go into a little bit about why it's important. So why are we going through the trouble of bringing this to you? Not trouble, but the pleasure. And then what we can do about it once we have all this information. Also, as a disclaimer though, all the information, basically we just did the work of bringing the information together. This information is out there for you to look up on your own. It's not our personal research that that we're presenting. It's the work of other more reputable people. But with that being said, we have the personal perspectives of being aunts and mothers and teachers and working, especially Layla and I working in early childhood. And even the great thing about emotional intelligence is that it's something that you can nurture in children of all ages. And Michelle has really great experience working with the second plane of development, children in the second and third planes of development, elementary and on. So we will have our personal little anecdotes and our experiences that'll contribute to it, but it's not our work. So we're learning with all of you.
I just want to add to that 2 points. One is just that once we start talking about it, you're gonna see that you're gonna take from your own life. Basically, you're gonna notice about your own. Are you sensitive to emotional intelligence within your own self, within other adults, and then other children? So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to read off of this definition of emotional intelligence, and it's basically the ability to identify, assess, and control one's own emotion and the emotions of others. So Daniel Goleman, he was a psychologist, I believe.
Right. He started out, I think, as like a reporter or journalist, like nothing to do with it, and then he switched over, and then in the 90s he popularized the term emotional intelligence. He didn't come up with it, but he made it really like
It's like
mainstream.
1995 when it officially was coined as a term.
Right. He made it like more mainstream and
That's amazing.
right.
So he broke it down into 5 points basically. So, and in no particular order. I'm going to say the first one as self-awareness, and that's knowing one's own emotions, strengths, weaknesses, drives, values, and goals, recognizing one's impact on others. So some examples: self-confidence, realistic self-assessment, self-depreciating sense of humor, deprecating, I'm sorry, self-deprecating sense of humor. Hey, we're live. Self-awareness depends on one's ability to monitor one's own emotional state and to correctly identify and name one's own emotion.
Michelle, you said not in any particular order, but I honestly see self-awareness as the most important point.
That's where it starts.
Because if you're not aware of who you are and how you respond to things, then you really can't, you can't call yourself emotionally intelligent. You can't say that you're in sync with your emotions. Absolutely. Or you're in sync with your own feelings, let alone the feelings of others. So I feel like self-awareness is really, really important. And the earlier we learn to be self-aware, the better. we learned about these things as adults.
Yeah.
But if we can bring this to our children, then they have a really big advantage. And you can go
Absolutely.
on.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Second one, self-regulation. managing or redirecting one's disruptive emotions and impulses, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances, the tendency to suspend judgment and to think before acting. So, what are some examples you guys can think of self-regulation?
Well, when we receive criticism, for instance, to like not react right away, to kind of just absorb it, think about it, try to dissect the truths from the falsehood, and then respond in a way that isn't just like, oh my god, I'm hurt, and they shouldn't have said that. So like I feel like it would be like just regulating yourself and your reactions, and then just assessing what you feel.
I think when I think about self-regulation, the term coping mechanism comes to mind.
Right.
As adults, we all have different coping mechanisms, not all positive.
No.
And so we're a bit at a loss when I say we as adults, in the sense that if we weren't fortunate enough to be raised in an environment as children where emotional intelligence was valued and we were explicitly taught these things, but now going forward with our children and our students and nieces, nephews, whoever, the coping mechanism. So you're upset, and being upset is not the problem, but like, what do you do? Like, what are you supposed to do when you're upset, when you're disappointed, when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're scared?
Right. So can you give us some examples,
Yeah,
Michelle,
like-
of what it means to be like, what it means to self-regulate, like the examples of just being
Damn, but you went so
self-regulative.
far away. I was like, that's number 4. It says here, trustworthiness, integrity, comfort, and rigidity, but just like open-mindedness. Basically, what we would say today is being, check yourself. That's what most people say, being able to check yourself.
Right.
Okay, so number 3, social skills, proficiency in managing relationships and building networks, and an ability to find common ground and build rapport. So, what are some examples, ladies, that can you think of, or what comes to mind when you think of social skills? One we're doing right now.
No, but for me, I think this is probably like the part that I struggle with the most. I just like.
In terms of defining, or just within your own self?
I guess just how I interact with people. And I guess I kind of do have a barrier, physical barrier, being that I wear hijab, I wear niqab, but also that I come off as like, there's like too much energy coming out there sometimes, and it's either too much energy or not enough energy. And I don't know how people perceive it, and it just throws me off a lot of the times. I need to learn like how do we do this,
So what are some tools that you use? Like, what do you?
I honestly I use a lot of I read people's body language a lot.
Okay.
I use reading body language as like my key to whether or not someone's open. They don't even have to talk to me, but if their face or they're just tense, then I have to kind of like ease myself in, or like.
But that's a good thing. You're picking up on social cues.
Yeah, I guess
I
so.
think that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
That's being emotionally intelligent.
Yeah. You think so?
Because you're aware of the other person's emotions and you're navigating their space accordingly.
Yeah, so your approach is different. You don't always have to take charge in the being loud. You can take charge in like the smallest little things to maneuver things. To go smoothly, yeah. So it's a good thing. What about you? Can you think of something or no? We can move on? Move on. Okay.
I need time to reflect on myself.
Okay.
It comes on.
So before I move on, I want to check in on you guys. If you have any comments, please go ahead and type them, or any questions or any examples so that we can share. We don't want this to be a lecture. We don't want it to be that we are talking to you. It's a discussion. We want you to speak up and partake. Okay, so number 4, motivation. A passion to work for internal reasons and go beyond money and status, which are external rewards. Does that make sense?
Definitely. That's everything right there. Intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna
Having
get
an
you far.
incentive. Like
But from
inner
within.
incentive.
from
Inner
within. Okay,
Because
okay.
it feels good. It brings you peace, and your reward is that good feeling you get in doing it.
The joy.
Not the
Absolutely.
prize. And I think that needs to be like a topic for another month.
That's right.
How I don't want to be so blunt, but how we're harming children with all the modes of extrinsic rewards and motivation that we offer them, and not letting, and like kind of like robbing them of the intrinsic motivation, which is really what's going to get them far in life. You know,
Right.
not the stickers and the gummies and the
or even
student
just
of the week
or even
awards
just
and,
adult praise and like adult
Yeah.
satisfaction.
yes.
Like they shouldn't want to do things because we want them to. It's a very like it's tricky, but it's something that's really important, I believe, and something that I struggled with as a child. I always wanted to please adults, but I'm learning now like to just
I think a lot of adults have struggled with that at some point. If they think back, if they think, I mean, a child, teenage, being in college, at some point, you're trying to please somebody, a boss. It could be anywhere. Maybe so little that you don't realize it. Maybe you just want to please your husband. Okay, whatever you want. I don't want an argument. All those things. And it goes back, so all these things kind of blend, I feel like, because then you can check yourself.
That's right.
And then when you find what's your, I don't want to say just, your passion in life, but what those little things are, what your goals, your inspirations, and that's also self-awareness.
That's right.
And then knowing how to interact with that person, that goes back to the social skills. So these kind of all blend together.
Yeah, they integrate. Mm-hmm.
But they are separate things that we all should take note of.
You're right.
Should I continue or like on here or just move on?
Can you say the examples of like
Okay.
what it sounds like to be
Yeah.
To
have motivation?
To have motivation. Okay, examples, an ability to move with energy and persistence. So what's the opposite of that? I mean, just to give visuals, sitting on the couch and like
Sluggish.
and binging on all like films or your series
Netflix.
or whatever. Yeah, Netflix, Hulu or Amazon Video or whatever. Which I have to say, I am definitely guilty of that. I'm not gonna say, oh my gosh, you're doing that. But you have a moment for that, and then you got to snap out of it, and you got to keep it moving. Okay, so having a strong drive to achieve, and that's going to be different for everybody, their personal goals. Optimism in the face of failure and or difficulty.
That's so important.
That's important too.
Okay, so
It's important for you to have, and it's important for you to like express that to others because
And to cultivate that in children.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some children like they fail at a task and they just completely lose it. And, like they can't start again.
Like, and within the walls of our own classrooms, we've seen the brightest of children who, because of their certain aptitudes and abilities, they're just so used to getting everything right, the first time or the second time, and they're just so used to that and used to being praised that even though they're fully capable, they shy away from works when they get more challenging.
Right.
They don't want to engage in new lessons that are outside their comfort zone because it threatens. It kind of threatens their winning streak, right?
That has also to do with the adult praise thing.
Exactly. So that they fear failure instead of kind of just understanding that failure is very much part of the process, and you know what, it's all good. I'm probably going to go back to that lesson tomorrow, or I can ask a friend who's mastered that work if they want to work with me tomorrow, or I'm going to ask my teacher. And it's and it was surprising initially, I remember as a new teacher, to see that in the brightest kids more than more so than in like the average child.
It's disturbing to see, and it's disturbing to see in adults too, like adults who just stay stagnant in their life because they're so afraid of trying something. It's just
I mean, I've seen it as much as like I've seen a student who, mashallah, was absolutely intelligent, and just couldn't get one thing. That this student was better at like math and science than than reading, right, or English, or they can read well, but just breaking down a sentence, subject, noun, all these types of things, and the way they broke down because they couldn't get it.
yeah.
And we had to be wrong. The book was wrong. The teacher was wrong. The students was wrong. Their group was wrong. Tantrums, all because they couldn't get past that. That feeling of not getting something right. That feeling of failure. When it's really important to have failure in your life. That's where you really learn.
Right. You don't learn from just being perfect.
Yeah, and then it goes back to what we were saying with the social skills, being self-aware, all these things. It's like he moved away, the student moved away from that and just focused on, always getting good, always getting good.
Right.
So, which brings you down to empathy. Everybody okay? Anybody in the audience, any comments, questions? I don't see anything. Feel free to comment or let us know any experience you had. Okay, so empathy, the last one, the ability to recognize, understand, consider other people's emotions, having the skill to treat people according to their emotions. What do you guys think of that?
Empathy is tricky because, like you were saying, it's treating people according to their emotions, like being able to read their emotions and then respond accordingly. And this could be used in a good way or in a bad way. Like you can manipulate other people's emotions if you have that skill of being empathetic. Like I was reading before, like serial killers are really empathetic.
No.
I'm serious.
Explain that.
Because they are so aware of other people's emotions.
So they prey on that, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
To manipulate.
You get
Yeah.
it? It's like, you're scared.
To lure
Right.
them in.
And even like psychopaths who like they can't connect with other people's feelings, but they know exactly what you're feeling.
Okay, let's turn this right. No,
I'm
let's
sorry.
get off the left.
No, that's really good.
No, but
It's just so intriguing.
No, but it's still things that
It's just so intriguing because like
those are things you need to know.
like you can use empathy as a way of helping others feel positive emotions, or you can use it as a way of just like sucking the energy out of everybody around you and making them feel what you want them to feel.
Mm-hmm.
So like I just like we were like with what's going on in the news with the whole Supreme Court justice and whatnot. Like everyone has empathy for the ones who have been coming forward with these allegations, but then on the other side, like you have others who they know they feel for that person, or they know what they're feeling. They could feel empathetic, but they use it in a negative way. They're just like,
Well, I was thinking in terms of like him crying and him trying to get a reaction or emotion from us so we can connect with him.
Exactly, yeah. He was trying
So
to
that
manipulate
was-
that room.
yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's a good
I was
example.
gonna say something, but let me not. I was just like, was he pinching himself under the table to make those two?
No.
Sorry, let me not.
No. He knows. He knew exactly what he
We
was
don't have
doing.
any political biases
We don't.
here.
No.
We don't.
No, we don't.
Oh, Riksha was like, why'd you get political? Why'd you start? Like, yeah, we just, I'm just trying to give an example of
It's
what.
current. It's current.
Yeah.
It's relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to break it down and like dealing with children, sometimes you can relate to them. You can truly empathize, and sometimes you can't. And just because you can't doesn't mean that you can't say the right things to this child. So in the example of the student, I can't get it right. Everybody's wrong. When I first saw that, honestly, my first reaction, I was stunned. And I'm like, okay, what is this? And I have to figure this out because I have to lead the class. I have to make everybody feel okay. And And so what do? Oh, you don't want to sit them out in the hallway. Oh, you get a timeout. It's not about that. This child was struggling. So it's just sitting down and talking to them what's going on, having them speak and just saying the things that'll soothe them, that'll help them come back to where they started. So, gearing it right back. And that's part of, empathy, honestly. It doesn't have to be like, oh, that happened to me. I know exactly how you feel. Oftentimes, we can do that. But what happens when we don't? Does that mean, well, I could only sympathize with you. Oh, well, try again next time.
Yeah.
No, you got to get on their level.
If you haven't done this already, get on YouTube after our live event. Search Brene Brown empathy, and you'll see her kind of cartoon comic.
Yeah,
the animated comic.
Yeah, that's really
all about what empathy really looks like, and she has different scenarios that she has like these animal characters kind of act out, and with just like daily day-to-day things, and it's really important to look at it because I remember it opened my eyes because I realized there were a lot of things that I was doing wrong thinking I was being empathetic.
right.
But then yes.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference, and it's important to see that. So that's very sad. You ready, Layla? Now let's talk
I'm not
about
ready for anything.
let's talk about why emotional intelligence is important. Okay. So
Right.
you got a good picture of what it encompasses. Now what's the big deal? What does it mean?
So, the shorthand for emotional intelligence is EQ,
Yeah.
and then
Emotional
the
quotient.
shorthand for intelligence is IQ. And so, let's just define what intelligence is. Intelligence is the ability to learn facts and skills and apply them, especially when this ability is highly developed. And then we talked about what emotional intelligence is, and that's when they say EQ, it's a measure of a person's emotional intelligence determined based on scores obtained from a standardized test. And we know that it's just the ability to identify and define and assess and control your own emotions. So there's a difference. Like one is just being able to retain facts and skills and whatnot. The other one has all to do with emotions. And then there was one quote by Daniel Goleman, I believe it was him. He said, we have two brains. We have a thinking brain and we have a feeling brain. So it's like really like your brain is doing quite a lot. It's not just thinking, and it's not just like controlling. It's like just the executive like control panel of our body. It's also it's what allows us to feel. And a lot of the times when they're testing people for mental illnesses or anything that has to do with like a big explosion of emotions, they have to look at the brain. They have to scan the brain. They don't scan any other part of our body. So, and the significance of EQ is that it has to do not only with oneself, which IQ is. IQ and your intelligence really is just about your own self, like your own skills, your own
Which
abilities.
makes perfect sense.
Right.
Because when you're going to take, for example, if you're going to take an SAT, are you going to focus on everyone else? No, you have to focus on yourself, try to get the best score you can get.
Right.
And then, inshallah, that'll open the doors for like scholarships and getting into the best schools.
Exactly. And I mean, IQ could be used to help others because you can use your intelligence to apply skills that will help
Absolutely,
the world.
it can.
Obviously, like the most intelligent
most of the
of
time
people,
it's-
they've come up with just extraordinary inventions and whatnot that have really shaped our lives. But EQ is that you have to think about others and your reaction to others and others' reactions to you, your relationship with them. So that's the big difference between IQ and EQ.
There's this saying that says CEOs are hired for their high IQs, but then they're fired for their low EQs.
Oh, I heard that
Wow,
before
I
too.
didn't hear
So
that.
you
I heard
can
that
like the
before.
IQ will get you. It can get you far, but you're not gonna stay up there like managing, like
That's
being in
right.
control of entire
Because you
companies
can't
and
do it with
stuff.
people.
Yeah, and essentially, if you're
Right.
not, the essence is like if you're not a people person, then
That's
at
true.
that's
No,
at the
that's
core
true.
of success. You know,
Right.
people have to like you.
Right, right. And oh my god, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
No, it was a really good point. It had to do with the whole leadership. Because I've been following Daniel Goleman on Instagram and on Twitter mainly, and a lot of his work now has to do with bringing emotional intelligence like workshops to like corporate, to the corporate world, because they're realizing that if they want like effective employees and effective leaders, then those people need to be emotionally intelligent. They need to be in tune with their emotions and the emotions of others. It's not just like charts and like data and
bring your
whatever
numbers
else.
up.
It's not just money and everything. It's like their day-to-day work is affected by their emotions, and that's the truth. So they're like now, when you type the hashtag emotional intelligence into Twitter, it's mainly just two fields: education or like corporate, like bringing it to the workplace, which was really really awesome, because although like we're going to be talking about how to bring this to children, I think it's never too late for the adults to learn how to develop emotional intelligence, which is also another difference between
EQ
that
and
and IQ, right? Because because sorry guys. Because a lot of the times intelligence, it can be developed, but it has mainly to do with the genes and your own, what you inherit, whereas EQ has a lot to do with your environment and
Nature and nurture.
Right.
IQ is more nature, and EQ has a lot to do with nurture. Although there will be individuals who are naturally they're born and they're more inclined
That's
to
right.
being emotionally in tune with themselves and others, but it can very much be nurtured. So if you have that kid, or if you yourself are that adult, where you feel you're really lacking in this area, just know that there are practical things that we'll get into that we can do to improve ourselves.
Right. And there was like an iconic study that was done for children, where they tested them, and they gave them they wanted to test their self-control, so they gave them the marshmallow test they talked about, like giving them a marshmallow and you can eat this now, or if you wait a short amount of time, you can get more. And they tracked
Later,
this, and they saw that children who they exhibit self-regulation, which is also self-control, it was linked to better school grades, better earnings when they were adults, just higher satisfaction rates as an adult. So there is definitely like external rewards of being like emotionally intelligent and being in tune with yourself and with others. And there was another thing is just being able to put words or put names to your feelings. They found that it makes a huge difference, like even just knowing the difference between sadness and being upset, and just like knowing the difference between them, that led to children being able to come up with strategies of how to deal with each emotion. So it's like more, it's just organized. Like when you have emotional intelligence and you're taught these things, you learn to identify your feelings, and then you learn how to deal with them. It's just easier that way. And we really hope that it just becomes like the norm in like every single classroom and every single home. So yeah, Do you guys?
I agree. It's definitely an importance. I often talk to them about my niece. We're pretty close. She's about to be 6 soon, and I'm so impressed with her because of the fact that she's in tune with her emotions. I have so many different examples, but I can specifically remember one time we're in an apartment building. There's like a stoop and then the door. So like we're walking up the stoop, and like she was being really emotional. I want to say like where it was me, my mom, and her. And she was throwing some tantrums and stuff, and then I was like, just go up, you don't understand where, like you don't know why you feel, maybe you're just hungry. She's like, I do know why I'm feeling like this. And she goes, I'm actually really upset. And she goes, I know how I feel. And I said, okay. And I wasn't like, I didn't shrug it off anymore. I didn't say, oh, whatever. I was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm like, you're upset? She's like, yeah, I'm for real upset. I'm like, okay, when we go upstairs, we'll talk about it. So we went up and we talked about it, and she told me why she was upset. But, she checked me, going back to that. And she told me that it's not just something that I'm feeling, or, she wanted to be heard, which is really important as well. And oftentimes as an adult, don't we want to be heard?
Right.
A lot of people have taken to, let's say YouTube Live or any type of social media, or, films or writing anything, books, whatever, what have you. And they feel like their point needs to be heard.
Right.
Right. And that stems from somewhere, that's being in tuned. It could be being in tuned later in life as an adult, or just early on as a child. Like my niece, who's almost 6, she's in tune way from this age. And this was actually a year ago. So I could only imagine where her future is going to take her if she knows who she is from this point. And she's letting the adults know. And alhamdulillah, like I'm taking that very serious. Before we even really studied this, I was just like, okay, she's talking to me. Let me, because I see children. I always say that I see them as just little people. I've always, mashallah, like talked to them like that, like where they are. And then a little older, just to kind of see where I can like push them, But it's really important. So do you guys have any examples, or do you agree, disagree?
No, I mean, that's like validating their feelings is really important. And,
So, yeah. So that's definitely one of the things that we need to do.
Right.
So I guess we'll lead into now. So what else, right? We have all this information. We know, we're understanding why it matters, and what do we do now? So first and foremost, and now this is a part where like our Montessori background kicks in. We have a whole curriculum area in Montessori education known as grace and courtesy. And grace and courtesy isn't necessarily, it is explicitly taught. For example, we will tell children, how to handle certain conflicts, or how to wait their turn, or how to interrupt a conversation. But more than anything, we're modeling it. So it's just, we as adults have to understand that the more we embody what we want children to learn, the more they will learn.
Right, leading by example.
Leading by example. So that's the number one thing, the first thing that we can do. And that requires a lot of work on our part. I think that requires more work than directly communicating to the child when they're upset. Like the bigger part is, what are we doing when we're upset? There have been instances when I was maybe angry or upset about anything, and I'm like, huffing and puffing and kind of just abruptly going through things, the routines, and kind of brushing someone off because I'm just not in the mood. And the children see that, and and sometimes maybe your child in that moment will approach you, and you kind of just be like, you know what, not now. So that's really confusing for them, because you're behaving differently, and they don't really know. Even if they're older, you think, oh, my son, she's 7, she's 8, whatever. They don't really understand that. So you have to be very clear. You can say, for example, I'm just really overwhelmed right now. That so-and-so decided to drop by without calling, or whatever it is that throws you off, or threw you off in that moment, or whatever. Or so you're telling them, I'm overwhelmed. So they make sense. They're like, okay, so that's a feeling, and that's why mom is feeling that way, and she's acting that way. Okay.
And I think that's really, important that you brought it up, because a lot of the times when children see adults reacting in a negative way, they almost always blame themselves. Like they almost always think it's their fault that the adult is feeling that way.
Yeah.
And if you don't go out of your way to explain to them why you're feeling the way they are, then they're gonna internalize it, thinking, oh my god, my mom, I don't know what I did, but she's upset. And also those negative emotions in adults, it really scares them too.
Yeah.
You know, I just, you know, like,
Which makes sense because that's
Right.
your comfort.
Exactly.
You know? Like if you
Right.
want another visual, like think of like a child with their security blanket. You know, it's just like they know that no matter what they feel, it's always cold and soft or whatever it is that they feel, or you know, fuzzy. So they see their parent like that, or their teacher that they're close to like that. Like
Right.
this is where I find peace and tranquility and all these things.
Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden that's getting disrupted. Oh, what did I do? Because I want that thing back. You know, and it makes sense. It completely makes sense, but it requires more patience, and that's why it's hard.
It's a lot of work. So you have to model it. Show them what it means to be self-aware on all those things we talked about before. You're gonna model it for your children and your students. And because at the end of the day, we're social mammals, right? And it's not just children, even adults, we kind of like look at each other, and our brains are wired as such that we tend to mirror each other,
Right.
you know? And the more we're around certain people, we tend to start acting like them, and you know, it happens. It's a very normal thing. So it starts with you, okay? I know there's a lot of pressure, but it starts with you.
It's a transformation.
Yes.
That's what
I
Maria
like
Montessori,
that.
she's always talking about. She's always on teachers' cases. Like, you have to transform yourself before you enter the classroom.
Before you're ready.
That's amazing.
You have to. And if you don't take the time to learn, I was just reading about it yesterday in her book, The Montessori Method. She was just talking about how, like, you want to transform a child's life, then you need to transform yourself first. And that, like, that ties into how we
Definitely.
express ourselves.
So you're going to do it by modeling it, and then you're going to help them recognize it within themselves. So if they're not feeling good, and I actually want to plug in here, it's not just with negative emotions. It's important to do this with positive emotions too. You know, when you see your child is really, you know, they're bubbly, they're happy. So be sure to say, I know you must be really excited because we have a play date with so-and-so.
Right.
Or you must be really happy because, you know, you were able to tie your shoelaces this morning. Or you must be really proud. So do this with the negative as well as the positive. And then moving on to like the more negative, the bigger feelings, like maybe they're afraid or they're disappointed. I understand that you're disappointed because you were expecting that we would do this and we aren't.
Right.
And it's just the more you introduce them to emotional vocabulary and the more you model how to use that vocabulary, then they can express it back to you. And that goes a long way in helping them self-regulate. So I wanted to I love this, share this book. It's called In My Heart. Might as well have been called In My Feelings. Sorry. It's In My Heart.
It's a book of feelings.
A book of feelings. And this is just one example of a book that explicitly teaches emotional intelligence, but we'll talk about some other books that implicitly teach emotional intelligence.
Right.
So this is really great. First of all, the illustrations are amazing. It's written by Joe Witek and illustrated by Christine Roussey. My girls love this. And she talks about like the character there is talking about her being like a home for different feelings. And page by page with the beautiful illustrations, they talk about what it looks like to be. I smile from ear to ear and twirl around so fast I feel as if I could take off into the sky. This is when my heart is happy. I'm summarizing. The page says more and goes into a little bit more detail about what happiness might look like for a child.
Right.
Now, new people and places don't frighten me. I can do it. Watch me go. This is me when my heart is brave. That's a good like
Yeah.
emotion too. I would say.
That really got me.
Oh my goodness.
When I get really angry, my heart feels as if it's going to explode. Don't come near me. My heart is yelling hot and loud. This is when my heart is mad. And it goes on to feeling the describing what it means when my heart is shy, and it's just a lot of pages and pretty much most emotions that children tend to feel.
Not only children.
Yeah,
I can
no.
relate.
So this is a really
No,
good
that's
one.
an awesome book. There's so
Yeah.
many books, and that's like they found that they did a study that reading can lead to
Yep.
higher emotional intelligence in children.
So that's the implicit. So this is a book that explicitly
Directly
talks
about
about
it, yeah.
emotional intelligence. But then but just reading books in general, and this is especially good for, I always look at you when I think about older kids because I know you've taught older children. This is especially good for older children when exposing them to different books that deal with different kinds of characters.
Different
'Cause
kinds of
essentially-
problems.
Yeah, because essentially when you're reading a book, you're reading from that narrator's perspective, so you're really inside
Yeah,
a
you
person's
get more inside
right.
their brain. As,
inside another person's
Right.
mind.
Can I
even
just
though it's
read this
fictional.
part?
Yeah, go ahead.
It says that fiction tricks our brains into thinking we are part of the story.
Oh, yeah.
The empathy we feel for characters wires our brains to have the same sensitivity towards real people. So the university study, it discovered that when you get lost in a book, your brain lives through the characters at a neurological level. And so, like, you see?
That's funny because I just had I don't want to say revelation or anything, but
No, say it, an epiphany.
The epiphany,
Okay.
because I love reading memoirs. They're my favorites, and so that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense, and I'm always like, oh, it's so good. Oh, I can't believe this person went through this, and I shed so many tears, but I can't put them down. It doesn't matter who it is. I love
Right.
memoirs. Yeah.
Another point I want to mention, and I've spoken to this about a few of my parents. I always, my parents, I mean, parents
Your students'
parents of my students.
Your parents.
A lot of times when
But I
they
get
talk
it.
about, when they talk about this, especially mothers, and going through this as a mother myself, and you realize that why does my child only act like this with me? Why am I at the tail end of the pouting and the beating and the kicking and the tantrums? And we have to understand is that that's actually very healthy,
A good thing.
because that indicates that your child feels so safe with you. You're their safe
So
space.
happy you brought this
That
up.
that they feel comfortable that they can act that way. A scared child is not going to do that.
That's so true.
If you I don't want to bring up any
No,
trigger
bring
points.
it
no,
up.
no, I'm just saying because I know for certain children certain adults who have who grew up in different environments, maybe you were terrified when you when you weren't feeling good or whatever. Maybe you were seen as this perfect child because you didn't act out with mom or dad, but it could also you have to understand that there was a reason that you weren't able to, and I think
Dr. Marie Montessori, she talks about that a lot.
yeah. So especially mothers, our children tend to behave a certain way with us because we are their safe space. So that's a good thing. And even when we talk, listening and validating their feelings, all within the boundaries. Like, you're going to name their feeling and you're going to say, I understand that you're feeling this way. I understand that it is okay to feel this way.
Right.
But hitting your brother because of it is not okay, or throwing this across the room is not okay. Let's find something else we can do. So for my little one, I introduced her to stomping. I actually got that from Mr. Rogers.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Mr. Rogers is our hero.
He was so on point with emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
In all his episodes,
Every
and
single
even the
one.
songs, they were all about, what do you do with the mad that you feel?
Right.
That's one of his
like,
songs.
Talk to me, Henrietta.
Exactly. So
Oh my goodness.
we had a stomping thing, and then for my older child, she has to go to her room and she has to close the door and she has to lock it. And I know that her room is her safe space.
Right.
And she'll let me know that she's doing that, and then she'll go upstairs and she'll come when she's ready. And
Wow, she
in that
lets
moment,
you know.
yeah, she'll let me know. Not in the nicest way, but she'll let me
Yeah,
know.
but
And then she goes.
still, that's good.
Yeah, so in the
No,
moment
I
you're-
never did that. I just went.
So in the moment, you're gonna identify the feeling, but in that moment is not necessarily the best time to have the discussion. The discussion is gonna follow
Right.
after they've had a
down.
chance to self-regulate, and that's what you're gonna help them through. So just listening and validating, setting boundaries, being consistent about them, letting them know what's okay and what isn't, and talking, modeling. Okay, so I mentioned it as like modeling about with how you describe your own emotions. So talk to them a lot about what you do also.
Right.
You know, okay, so I get frustrated easily too. I understand. You're frustrated now. You know what I do when I'm frustrated? I sometimes just like to walk away from that task because it's taking a lot out of me right now, and I'm gonna go back to it later. That's what I do. Do you want to go back to this later? Because I realize that, you know, whatever, you're following the directions, you're trying to build the Lego thing, whatever,
Right.
but it's not happening. You know, give them options based on what you do. They want to hear what you do. They want to be just like you.
Unfortunately, that's something that I'm just starting to learn now. Like as a child, if something was difficult for me, I just had to do it. Like I didn't take a break, and that was really like disturbing for me, and you know, it made me feel like a failure when it would have been better if I just like left it alone and then came back to it later.
Yeah.
Or not myself, but a lot of people, they might relate with this. When they're feeling a certain way, they resort to, you know, eating, you know, or
Oh yeah.
just like even like my youngest, he's gotten like a really big sweet tooth, and when he gets upset, he says it now. He's like, you know, I want to feel better by eating a piece of chocolate. I'm like, what?
He sees you doing that. He's like, you're
I just
modeling
said
the
it wasn't me.
You're modeling
No.
the behavior. Definitely.
No, oh my goodness.
Or he sees
But-
his teacher doing that. Does he see me doing it?
I don't know, but I was just like, wow. So he wants to like calm down by eating a piece of chocolate. But definitely giving them the tools to regulate those emotions is so important. Healthy tools, healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
You know what else is really important, and this is why I'm gonna mention a bit about Montessori. For those who aren't familiar, a Montessori classroom is a multi-age environment.
Right.
It should be, at least. Lately, we're seeing an increasing trend in Montessori schools where they're splitting classes up by age group.
Right. They're like separating the
And-
kindergarten, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
kinders, or they call it like, you know, they put just the 3s and 4s together, calling it stepping stones or something. And, you know, schools will do that for whatever logistical reasons, but having a multi-age environment is so important because that's a big factor in helping children develop emotional intelligence too.
Right.
Having access to mingle with and interact with children of all ages and of all backgrounds and different personality types, and being in a Montessori type classroom where you are working with others
Right.
constantly throughout the day, as opposed to kind of just, you know, being in your own space
Sticking
in
to
your
what you know.
desk and everyone doing the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into that. So it's really good to just encourage children to interact freely with other children across all age ranges.
I think that's probably my favorite part of a Montessori classroom, the
Yeah.
multi-age thing, because they're just advantages for the youngest, for the oldest, for the ones who are in the middle. There's just so many advantages, and it looks natural. That's what a home
And they're
looks
all like emotional.
right. They're
social
on
emotional
different levels,
advantages,
emotionally, academically, everything developmentally. So and it mimics the home.
Sorry, I
because-
just wanted to check in on. I don't see any comments, questions.
That's not a bad thing.
No, it's
Okay.
good. But
Less-
I
less
want
pressure on
to
us,
see
right?
what's going on.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is we need to kind of make lead I want to say lead, a
Right.
shift in the way that we think. We need to start valuing
Yeah.
children's social and emotional competencies as much as their formal academic skills, because let's face it, it's very clear, it's very apparent,
It's not gonna do you any good.
what's being rewarded typically,
Yeah.
and that's why the social emotional part is often brushed under the rug, and it shouldn't be. So we really want to think that the social and emotional well-being of today's children is going to be the social and emotional well-being of the future
Okay.
of society, of the world, and everything.
Can you imagine if like when you go for a job interview, instead of just like listing your like achievements, like they put you through a test to see how emotionally intelligent you are? That would change so much.
I would get every job, I feel like.
But that goes,
Is that thinking too high?
but that goes back to what I said about that quote. If for those who might have tuned in later, I'm going to repeat it.
Okay.
That CEOs get hired for their high IQs, but they get fired for their low EQs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you might not we necessarily don't have a formal interview process testing our EQs, but
It's gonna
you can get
become a
in
trend.
from your IQ, but will you be able to stick around?
Right.
And that's where the whole
Yeah.
That's
emotional
so
part.
true. I think
It is.
I could just think of like 5 people off the top of my head who couldn't deal.
Yeah.
They were so brilliant. Like
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
or how?
but
Go ahead.
sorry. To
No,
go
no,
back,
go ahead.
There's
Yeah.
hope. That's why we're talking about
I
this.
know, I love that.
It's not.
It's true.
It can be cultivated.
Absolutely.
It's
At
a conscious
every
practice.
point of your life.
It's a
yeah,
conscious
it's-
practice.
Yeah, it definitely could be developed.
But-
no, I was just gonna say just to like, because you kind of ended it really nice though. But
No, it's not. Go on.
I know. Oh, something
Oh,
happened
sorry.
with my battery.
Let me just. Okay.
So, no, you were talking about the job. How often, because this has happened to me and people that I know, how often have you been on a job interview and then you're like going over the questions? What are your strengths, your weaknesses? What can you add to the team or the environment? The same typical questions. And this is your time to shine. You give them the best. But then you feel, can I just show you what I can do? You ever feel like that? Just put me to the test. I can show you that I can do this. Like talking about it doesn't do it justice after a while. It's like, because I feel like, how many times can you look it up online, like how to answer these things? So everyone's saying the same thing,
Right.
but if I show you, then you can see that I'm different and what I'm saying is actually true. Like I'm not just talking the talk.
Right, like
type
that's
of
where
a
your
thing.
personality comes in.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
everything, yeah.
So we've all felt like that, but
and I think like it's not gonna work if you hire someone who has so many qualifications but they can't get along with their team.
Yeah.
They can't get along with their superiors, their subordinates. They can't get along with anyone. They can't get along with clients. It's just like, what's the point of you?
yeah. And just to play the devil's advocate, sometimes it's like they haven't been given the time to, because I have seen the most beautiful resumes and it's like they did this while they were in school. They were interning in these different places. They were part of the president of these clubs and all this stuff. Then they moved on and they were always busy, but they didn't take a breath. They didn't like get dirty and just experience things. Even though they were around people, they were just about getting the duties met. They weren't really engaging, interacting, and allowing room for failures.
So let your kids.
That was a bummer. Let's move
Let
on.
them know. I just want to encourage everyone to let their children start take responsibility for their own lives and happiness as early as possible. They're like, just keep delivering that message that you're responsible
Oh, I just told my
your-
children that
for your
yesterday.
happiness, and
I was
hopefully
working.
whatever is thrown their way, like
Right.
that'll be a good reminder in helping them cope and deal with the good and the bad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a shameless Montessori plug here that I just want to show people.
Okay.
So this is a really intensive study done by the European Journal of Education Studies. So if you Google the title, I want to show you. It's the effect of Montessori and traditional methods of education on emotional intelligence of children. So if you kind of just want to
Other way.
other way, like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you just screenshot that, Google some of those keywords, it's gonna turn up. And I had a chance to go through it. I didn't touch on it during this discussion because it really wasn't about Montessori education, but this is just for people who might want to know more. So,
Right.
and that's a wrap.
That's
Okay.
a wrap.
To sum up, I just want to add, I feel like personally, there's no way in when you're researching or understanding this, because I'm sure I'm hoping that you go home and you research this for yourself. There's no way that you self-assess while you're reading this. You're going to get in tune with your own emotions and see how you are able to just develop your social skills is what I'm trying to say. And then if you can understand that within yourself, then inshallah you can identify those emotions with your child or just children in general. You don't have to have a direct link. But did you feel that? I mean, I definitely did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
If anyone has any questions, you can chime in.
Right, and please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to this channel.
Our handle is Follow the Child NJ and
NJ,
NJ.
because there are other Follow the Child.
Yeah.
We are NJ.
At Follow the Child NJ. If you have any questions, we didn't see any questions, comments now, but if you can think of some later,
That's
please
fine.
email us at followthechildnj@gmail.com.
Yeah. Or DM us on Instagram.
Instagram,
Or
Twitter,
whatever.
And we're
Facebook.
going to, this
Yeah.
is going to be a recorded and saved session, and it's also going to be a podcast.
Yes, so we'll be
So-
able to share that, and we'll go ahead and share the links where you can also reach us at. That's
And just
it.
remember that if you have any topics that you're interested in, that you'd like to partake in discussion in the future, then suggest that to us, and we'll definitely take that into consideration. And that's it. That's a wrap.
That's it.
We're done.
Thank you for
Thanks for
tuning
tuning
in.
in.
Again, we apologize for the
Delay.
technical, for the delay.
No.